Welcome back to Marvel Puzzle Quest with me, P.I. McLeod, and yeah, we're gonna do a thing. That thing is reviewing 2016's 4-star characters. Now, I got myself a little time limit once again. Seems like when I do these things during daylight hours, I have to, I don't know, put a little fire under my butt, because gotta get these things done, got other things to do, you know, responsibilities. Okay, so let's go into the versus mode because it's the best way to take a look at them. Class of 2016, because you know it kind of limits what. Wow, way to lag it out there. Kind of limits what you can look at there. Is my Wi-Fi on? Yeah, it is. Interesting. Anyways, let's go on in this fight. I'm not actually gonna fight this guy. Don't need to. But there we go. Let's set this level A to Z. Okay. And we'll just remember to come back to Peggy Carter here once we get down to the P's. Let's be nice and fair, alphabetical order for everyone. I'm going to be quicker about it this time than I was last time because honestly, if they're not worth talking about, I'm not going to go on and on about them. So, first up, Blade. He's kind of mid-tier. He's got some utility for you, but his damage he's packing isn't anything worth writing home about. Why you'd want to use Blade? Well, his red is pretty much the main reason to use him. It's a passive that if there's, and put it up to 5, right? You know, 10 or more red tiles on the board, he converts a random basic tile to a pretty strong strike tile. Remember, these are boosted numbers, okay? So these aren't the real numbers when they're not boosted. So when Blade's team reaches 9 or more red, this red AP, not tiles on the board. When you get 9 or more red AP, though, this power transforms into the Bloodlust. Before I move on to what the Bloodlust means, I want you to take note that you have to get 9 or more red AP, right? That means you're matching those red tiles, which means if you're bringing those tiles on board below 10, you're not getting those strikes made. So if you have below 10 red tiles on the board, and you're not matching red because you're trying to bring up your strike tile count on the board, this passive does nothing for you. It's only good if there's a great amount of red out there, and or if you've made a lot of red AP. People that can help with this problem are like 3-star Cyclops, you know, 4-star Cyclops even, Iron Man, just, you know, people that can help you get red AP or tiles out there. So it's a cool passive. It's just limited in its, you know, usability. But let's say you get that 9 AP or more. Every turn, Blade consumes 1 red AP and deals a pretty decent amount of damage. This is passive, mind you, to a random enemy. When his team falls below 7 red AP, it goes back into the hunger. Okay? So as long as you keep the red AP up, he's going to do that hit every turn, which is a pretty decent hit for just 1 spent red. But let's face it, nowadays is the land of passive characters. People that do passive powers and passive damage all the time. This guy's passive damage that he's outputting actually has a cost. And it doesn't kick in until you get enough red in, you know, in your storage, in your inventory, I guess we'll say. It's still good, especially for 2016. No one else was really doing this sort of thing back then. So on 2016's point, it's a pretty good power. It's not that great nowadays, but, you know, we're not talking about nowadays. The only other thing I would make note of is this Tools of the Trade. It's a team attack, it's green, and if you have 7 or more red AP, he actually heals himself for a decent amount too. It's not that big of a deal. It's just it's nice because he can heal himself with it and do team damage all at the same time. That's pretty notable. There are not a lot of abilities to do that. Supernatural Sense, no. We're just not going to talk really about this. It's 11 black for very little effect. You can create some red tiles with it. That can kind of help you go. But it takes 11 black to get rolling. Nope. Okay? I would say he's mid-tier because his whole kit isn't entirely usable, and his passive has, well, qualifiers you need to meet before they actually become usable. So, there's Blade. Next up, Drax. Another person with some passive ability. And honestly, if you plan around it, I mean, I guess that's fair to say for most characters, right? But if you plan around Drax's, it can be very effective turn after turn. Go into his abilities here. The main reason you'd want to use Drax, secret weapon. It's really what it's about. It's an active ability for 9 purple. It creates a purple strike tile that's pretty strong, but actually stronger for every countdown you have on the board. It gets super strong if you have a few countdowns out there, up to 5 max. I mean, just look at the number. 600, we'll just round it, right? 600 times 5, that's 3,000 extra strength on top of the 800. So you're looking at, and I rounded, right? But let's just do some friendly math. About 4,000 damage strike tile from a 4-star character. This is a boosted list, but still, that's something notable. As a passive, though, is where it's really at. When a friendly countdown tile expires, deal a pretty decent amount of damage. It's not like blades or anything, but this doesn't cost you AP. All it costs is a countdown to expire. A friendly one, mind you. Can you think of any friendly countdowns that you have that expire commonly? Like 3-star Hulk? Like 4-star Hulk? The Red Hulk? You know? Captain Marvel makes a countdown. Like Wasp makes a countdown. Like Medusa. Like, you get my point? There's a lot of characters that make countdowns, and some of them make them passively. Coulson's one of his best friends because Coulson's constantly putting out 1-turn countdowns. Wasp as well. Mantis nowadays they're a really good pair together because of all the countdowns she makes. Point is, teaming with someone who actually makes 1-turn countdowns passively, and you have a really good use of that secret weapon. The other abilities worth noting: Destroyer. It's only 10 black. It's not too expensive. It's like mid-price. Does a pretty good amount of damage for 10 black. And then on top of that, destroys 3 enemy special tiles and 4 random tiles surrounding them. When it says enemy specials, I want to put that out there. That means invisibles. That means repeaters. That means countdowns. That means pretty much anything on the board. You can target almost anything he wants with that. It's not a common ability that just says any 3 enemy specials, and for 10 black you get good damage and good tile destruction. If there's a downside, is that it costs 10 black to use. Don't use Slice and Dice. It costs 8 red, deals damage, and pretty good damage, honestly, if your target has more than 90% of their health. You have to match quite a few tiles to get up to 8 red. I mean, obviously 2 match 4s of red would be ideal. But by that point, I bet you the enemy's below 90% of their total health. So, yeah, there's a lot better ways to use your red AP, because you're usually only going to get the 16k damage out of this, and this is boosted, mind you. So, yeah, Slice and Dice is not where it's at for Drax. Use him for secret weapon and for destroyer. I'd say he's mid-tier as well, just like Blade, because he kind of relies on other things, other outside entities to help him out. I personally like him more, but that's because I don't mind playing around with countdown tiles more. Next up, Gwenpool. Gwenpool is another mid-tier character. You could actually, if we're being fair, you could rank her high tier, and let me get into why. The main reason you'd want to use her is, well, it's not plot armor. I'm going to say exploits, and let me explain. Exploits, even though I have it at 3, you can't really see much of the difference here, right? But read the text. That bottom little blurb made some improvements to the dev console. You have to trust me on this. Really, all it means, all this ability is for 9 purple, or pink, depending on who you're talking to, you get a little cheat code panel that pops up. It's like a 3x3 grid of symbols, and you get to put in 3. Just click whatever 3 symbols you want, right? And depending on which 3 you click, you'll get a different effect that happens on the board. Sometimes the effect is just 1 damage, which is obviously not what you want. Sometimes the effect is something silly, where like Team Pink, where it turns your text pink for that ability for exploits. But sometimes it's something specific, like destroy all enemy strike tiles, destroy column 3, destroy the corners, destroy all protect tiles. There's very specific things you could do with her, and the best part is it's not random. If you go out there to a wiki, and trust me, type in MPQ Gwenpool Sploits, and you'll find a wiki very easily that tells you what all the code combinations are, whether they're serious or the silly ones as well. And then you could use her whenever you get to 9 purple. Make sure to bring a feeder to keep it there. You could always, and I mean always, have a way to destroy all strikes or attacks or protects or any specific column or any specific row or just the corners. You get the point. Oh yeah, and it's doing damage when it does it. It's not a bad ability at all. The downside, you have to have a wiki up. So, like, if you're playing on a phone like I am, that means switching your screen on over and looking at another screen. I know nowadays gamers are pretty fond of looking up cheats and FAQs and, you know, like, other ways of shortcutting the game. Not me. I don't like looking around at the different screens if I don't have to, so I put her mid-tier because you have to look at different screens. But if you're willing to have an extra tab open and flip around to a wiki and do it, I think she'd be high tier. Throw her in with 3-star Wanda, generate your purple nice and easy, and then control the board. I think she could do really well in class of 2016, mind you. I'm not saying nowadays, just 2016. Other notable power goes to Deus Ex Machina, Macarena, whatever you want to call it. It is a passive, and that is only in the fact that it starts with a gun on the board. This is the negative part of this ability. That gun tile will sit there until anyone matches or destroys it. It just get rid of it, whether it's you or the enemy, because you can't use this power truly until it's gone. Once it's gone, you get 10 green. Well, if you have 10 green, you can fire this off, and she'll do 16,000. This is boosted, mind you. Damage per shot. It's 3 shots, and sometimes it hits the entire enemy team, or just one person 3 times. And it's pretty powerful. Honestly, for 10 green, it's actually very strong for what you got here. Problem is, you have to get rid of that gun first. It's supposed to symbolize the gun sitting there on the table while you're talking to somebody, and you grab it and you go. But all the flavor text aside, it's actually really strong. You just have to get rid of that gun. Sploits makes her worth it if you're willing to pull up a wiki. Like I said, if you're using a wiki, then I'd say she's high tier, just for that purpose alone. Otherwise, mid tier. Howard the Duck. You're going to think me kind of funny here, but depending on the situation, he's actually very useful. Is he high tier? No. Again, I would consider him mid. You're going to ask me, like, hey, is there a low tier person in your list? Don't worry, we're getting there. He's got some very good usability, some very good usefulness, utility, mind you. I think there's 2 notable powers when it comes to him. I think all 3 of them are pretty unique, but here, I'll give you the downer right now. Quack Fu 1-2 sounds fun. You spend 8 green, and then it kills all the green tiles on the board, dealing damage for each one of them. Here's the problem. You had to collect green to destroy green. And that's the problem, is that you probably don't have a lot of green left on the board. You need someone to fill the board with green tiles just to make this really fun. So that's a pretty downer of ability. But the other 2 abilities I want to note are super good. I'm going to start off with Duck Duck Loose. It's 12 purple. It is a little pricey, and I understand that. However, he was one of the first characters to say, you know what, invisibility is cool, but why don't we just put a bunch of them out there? Most characters like Professor X and Miles Morales, Invisible Woman, would put out a single invisibility tile and say, I'm invisible. Howard's like, nah, I put 5 of these puppies out there. And so he's invisible as long as one of them exists. And then at the start of his turn, you deal damage for each Duck Duck Loose or invisibility tile of his on the board. So you could gather another 12 purple, throw it out there again, and let's say you have all 10 of them out there still. That's 10,000 damage per turn. You're constantly ticking down damage based on these Duck Duck Loose tiles. It's damage ticking down and keeps him safe. As long as one of them remains on the board, he's invisible. It's actually a really good ability. It's a little pricey at 12 purple. That's the downside. The other one that's people don't think about often enough, in my opinion, is the Bill of Rights. It's 10 blue. So again, it's mid-priced, but it stuns the target for 3 turns. That's a good point, right? The other thing is convert to 5 random enemy special tiles to basic tiles. Remember when I was talking about how Drax's Destroyer can just target special tiles? Yeah, same thing here. And just random enemy special tiles. 5 of them get turned to basics. Not destroyed, so even Beta Ray Bill can't get the bonus out of it. There's a lot of people that are like, hey, you destroy this, you get this. But no, Howard bypasses all that stuff. He says, no, we're just turning them to basics. No one gets to reap any rewards out of this. Oh, and by the way, you're stunned for 3 turns. It's a really good blue power. For 10 blue, that's actually a lot of quality output right there. Now, of course, you probably want some sort of blue generator to go with them to keep that up, but that's for you to figure it out. But just know that enemy tiles aren't safe with him around, and that makes him actually pretty viable. Mix this with his Duck Duck Loose, and it's actually pretty fun. He is a control character for sure. He's not doing a ton of damage throughout. Again, I call him a mid-tier only for the fact that he does have high-cost powers. His green being the cheapest, but it's probably the worst of them. Let's get rid of some of the other 5s off the side here, right? Kate Bishop is a 4-star Hawkeye sort of character. We're not talking Ronin, we're talking Kate Bishop. She likes damage. That's pretty much what she does. And she has one special ability that not a lot of people have. Very few people in the entire Marvel Puzzle Quest roster have anything like this. Ruthless Precision. You fire this off, you get a big old blue countdown tile. It does a ton of damage. Look at that, 38k for 12 blue. And it's expensive, mind you. But while that blue countdown's out there, the enemies, plural, the entire team, cannot gain health. So if Medusa's trying to regen health, nope. If Rescue's out there, nope. If anyone's thinking about recovering, nope. It's kind of neat in that regard. She basically makes it so people cannot get health back. And if the target enemy drops below 25% health, destroy this tile and down the targeted character. Now that's new. When she was buffed, this was added into play. That used to not be there. But that's a nice little fun little addition, right? I think so. It is 12 blue after all, so it should do it. Her black is a little cheaper than it used to be at 8. She does a decent amount of damage. For 8 black, that's a really good amount of damage, honestly. And gets a 4-turn black countdown tile that will deal a little bit of damage to herself. It's supposed to be her getting into trouble, wading in too deep, but honestly, it doesn't really happen too often that it hits. I mean, it's 4 turns. Allowing days, fights go super fast. Finally, this ability is actually pretty good. I have it down lower because I think at the time I was using other characters to make my strike tiles, but that's basically what this does. You get 5 pretty decent strike tiles out there and a 2-turn countdown that removes up to 3 friendly strike tiles and deals some damage. I do not like the fact that it removes friendly strike tiles. But note that it doesn't have to have strike tiles to do the damage. Let's say you've lost all your strike tiles between now and then, okay? That countdown goes off, you'll still do the damage. You don't have to have friendly strikes removed to do that damage. So don't think that there's a requirement there. It just, it does remove them whether you have them or not. All in all, because of the price of her powers, this 12 blue, which is obviously her best ability, the 8 black, which isn't bad, but it does have that little shtick about hurting herself. At the end of the day, I'd say she's probably mid-tier as well. Probably edging on high because it is high damage. She has been buffed. So because of that, she actually has really good damage output on her blue and her black. I mean, even her purple's got super good damage, but I just don't like the removal of your own strike tiles. So I'd say maybe like a high mid-tier, like she's edging up there. She's just expensive. That's her problem. 4-star Luke Cage. Luke was, jeez, man, when he came onto Puzzle Quest, the 4-star Luke, that is, he caused a lot of problems because back then people didn't have a ton of passives left and right. When you saw passives, it was like just something nice. It wasn't game changing. Well, his passive makes it so whenever the enemy fires a power, he creates a nice fat projectile. And if he's in front, he also removes an enemy attack, strike, or projectile. It made you kind of think about, do I want to cast this power? Because he just keeps getting projectiles that are nice and beefy. That's kind of the whole shtick behind Luke Cage. The other two abilities are very damaging, but there's a cost to it. This is 8 yellow, so it's not too expensive. Fortifies 3 friendly special tiles, then deals damage for each fortified friendly special tile on the board. If Iron Fist is an active ally, you first create a projectile. I want you to note that he fortifies those 3 special tiles, then he does damage for each fortified friendly special on the board. In other words, you're not doing damage without a special tile out there. Because if there's no friendly special tiles out there, nothing's getting fortified, and hence he does no damage. So this ability is only good if you already have specials out there. Thankfully, he makes them passively, but still, then you have to generate the 8 yellow to actually use this. Bunch of Fiddle Faddle's a lot more expensive at 13 red, but it does a lot of damage, and even more so damage if there's no enemy strike, protect, or attack tiles on the board. Hence if he's doing what his job is, which is to slowly remove enemy tiles while you add more to your, to your pockets. I would say he's only mid-tier, and that's only because this only works if he has specials out there, and that's not a guarantee. This is super damaging, but it's super expensive at 13 red. Defender's pretty nice. You would think that's pretty cool overall because you get free protects out of it and tile removal. But what are we talking? PvP? Because this is the class of 2016 PvP, right? Then we're waiting on everyone to cast powers. And since we're waiting on them to cast powers, that means this ability does nothing until they actually cast a power first and hit you with it. So it's nice, but it's a little too late sometimes. So I would say he's mid-tier. Medusa is high-tier. All there is to it. I don't even need to say it twice, but I probably will. Medusa, where do you even say her worst one is? The reason why she's so good, all 3 abilities are super good for her, and they're not too expensive for what they do. Well, when I say expensive, let me just say that Hair Metal is the only one that has a cost. The other 2 are passives. When she hit the game, that was a big deal. Like, only 2 passives? What the heck? This is almost like cheating. And it kind of felt like it sometimes. For 10 purple, she swaps, well, let's pump it up, right? 16 pairs of random tiles, stealing any swapped, strike, protect, or attack tiles, improving them by a giant load. Like, that's crazy. That's super crazy. You improve and you steal and improve tiles that are swapped. 16 pairs, do the math, that's 32 tiles. And how many tiles are on the board? That's 64 tiles on the board. You're swapping half of the board around. Odds are in your favor, you're going to grab something. I put it down to 3, but that's only because I'm not so interested in the attack tiles. And the improving is good enough as it is, right? The other 2 abilities, I like them. Entanglement is a passive. You get a 4-turn countdown. It does damage at the end of every turn. Remember we're talking about passives that do damage every turn, like Blade? Yeah, she doesn't have a requisite. She just has to put this countdown out there, and that's it. She does damage every turn. If that tile gets matched or destroyed, she creates 2 attack tiles. Guess what? Those attack tiles are half the value of that damage she puts out. So you still are going to have that damage out there. Just in the form of attack tiles, not as a countdown that's dealing damage. It's pretty notable. This is a really good ability because it's constant damage output. You don't need to have, 9 or more red AP or a countdown tile expiring. But guess what? This is a countdown, so yes, it does work with Drax. It's just a good ability all around. Finally, the Resolute Queen, which is probably the #1 reason to use Medusa. Whenever an attack, protect, or strike tile is matched, if it's friendly, you get a burst of health to the team. If it's an enemy tile, you get 3 AP in purple, blue, or green. No, you cannot control which one you're getting, but just know that she's using the purple. Some of her best friends use blue and green. Like, oh, I don't know. You know Polaris, right? She uses blue. Or Carnage, right? That's kind of like Medusa's best friend in this game. He uses green. There's plenty of ways to abuse this. For all these reasons mentioned before, Medusa is definitely high tier. Probably one of the best characters in the 4-star tier for 2016. When I scroll down this list, I'm pretty much, yep, she's the best one in this list. Easily. Bar none. Let's move along. Hey, Moon Knight, or Mark Spector. He's pretty cool. Honestly, he's pretty fun. Problem is, he's unstable, which fits the character, right? Here's the reason why he's fun, but not good enough to be high tier. And that's Lunacy. Lunacy actually goes by 3 names. You have Lunacy, which you're going to basically do one of 3 things. At the start of the fight, he's either going to have Aspect of Khonshu, Mark Spector, or Mr. Knight. One of 3 different personalities come out. If it's Aspect of Khonshu, he creates a nice fat attack tile anytime you match black tiles. If it's a Mark Spector, he deals extra damage, and a nice amount of it too, anytime you match a purple tile. And if he's Mr. Knight, you create a strength, well, a pretty fat strength strike tile whenever you match a green, that is. Kind of like Dakin, but at the 4-star level. The problem is, all these abilities are so good, but you don't know which one you're getting until you start the fight. So you don't know if you're getting attack tiles, strike tiles, or just pure damage on purples. And that's why it makes a mid-tier, not high tier. Sure, you're getting something, but you can't plan on it. Moon Silver Blades is really strong. 12 green, super strong though. Look at that, 50,000 damage. Here's why. It's to a random enemy. Again, Moon Knight can't plan. You can't plan who you're going to kill because of Lunacy on his purple and his Moon Silver hitting a random person. So, yeah, it's kind of a head scratcher there. Like, it's as good as it is. You never know if you're going to get rid of the person that's really troubling you or just some goon that you could have left alone for a while. Finally, just the Fist of Khonshu. This is something that's finally not random on him, but it's probably his least impressive ability. 9 black makes him do damage to the enemy, and it's a pretty decent amount. If that damage downs an enemy, he gets some health back. It's not bad. It's not a bad ability at all. It's not as impressive as that green or as that purple. It's just they're random, and hence why we put them at mid-tier. Can't count on them. Let's move on down to Nova. Nova was the first dude in the game. I'm struggling to think if there was another one that did this. No, I think he was the first one to introduce Airborne to the game. For 6 red, he creates 3 black strike tiles, and they're pretty beefy. So it's a pretty cheap ability. Like back then, 6 is like, what? That's like nearly free. While at least 1 black strike tile is on the board, it becomes Rocket Man, and here's where we have fun. So for 6 red, you knock an enemy into the air for 2 turns. They become airborne, which is basically holding them prone. They can't really do anything. Sure, they can't take damage while they're up there, but they can't do anything either. They can't cast abilities. Their passives aren't helping their team. They're sitting ducks. No offense, Howard. When the enemy lands, they take a pretty decent amount of damage. For 6 red, they're getting 20k damage after the fall. Then the power turns back into takeoff. And of course, if you still have the black strikes out there, 6 more red sends someone else on a nice roller coaster. Nova was the first one to get that. And it was pretty much at the time, and still today, you could think of it as a stun of sorts that's going to leave them super bruised, if not knocked out. His yellow helps lend to this. It's only 7 yellow. It does some decent damage for 7 yellow and creates a black strike tile for each ally still in the fight. So in other words, another way to prep to knock someone airborne. If you have 6 red, but you also have 7 yellow, cast that yellow first. Then cast your red so you can knock someone up in the air. If you do it the other way around, you're making strike tiles first with the red, and then you're just going to make more with this yellow. Finally, there's Danger Zone. I put this down to 3 because of the blowback. I don't like using it as much for that purpose. It's not to say it's not good, it's just, I have other ways to use my black AP. Let's pump it up to 5. For 8 black, if there's fewer than 5 friendly black strikes on the board, you create 4 of a pretty good strength. Otherwise, in other words, if you have more than 5, right? Or I should say 5 or more, my bad. He loses control, crashes into the enemy. He converts all the friendly black strike tiles to basics and does a pretty large amount of damage for only 8 black. My problem with this is the fact that you lose all your strike tiles, and those strike tiles are pretty beefy. So unless I'm killing the enemy, I don't really want to use Danger Zone. Not to mention, now I can't knock people airborne until I make more strike tiles. So, no thank you. I'll move it down to 3 and just not use his black that often. But the fact that I could, for 6 red, basically take someone off the board, and for 7 yellow I could add to that threat, I'm going to rate him high tier. For the class of 2016, again, I want to quantify that. Class of 2016, I rate him high tier because it's kind of like a stun, but it's a stun based on damaging. You're throwing out strike tiles in the name of sending them airborne. That's really, really good. We gotta jump back up here because P comes before Q. Sorry, Quake, you'll have to wait. Peggy Carter jumps into Puzzle Quest and pretty much shattered a lot of expectations. Not because she was a brand new character that, hey, MPQ created this for Marvel, which is really cool. But, more importantly, Legendary Presence changed our expectations from our characters. She is definitely a high tier character because of this ability alone. When her health is greater than 30%, all enemy powers cost 4 AP more. Now, obviously, nowadays this doesn't mean as much because nowadays we have tons of passive play in this game, and so you're not casting powers that often. But for back then in 2016, this was the root of all evil. This was super annoying, and it was because of this that Medusa started to get popular, because like, oh, passive damage and I don't have to have AP for it? Thank you, yes please. This is just for enemy powers costs. It didn't affect passives. So in other words, Blade still only needed 9 or more red to get his whole bloodlust thing rolling. Okay, you get the point. But this holds a lot of enemies at bay. So if you're going against Kate Bishop and she's got that nasty 12 blue ability, that ruthless precision, right? Well, now she needs 16 to cast it. The match is probably over by then. So Peggy Carter does a really good job with this ability, holding the enemy's actions at bay. I'd say her next best ability is probably do as Peggy says, but I usually don't use her for stun factors, so hence why I have it down to 3. But let me just show it to you anyways. Overall, it's still a really good power. For 11 blue, I'm going to pump it up to 5 for you. Stun all enemies but the target for 3 turns. So in other words, the person in front doesn't get stunned, but the other 2 do. And they get stunned for 3 turns, and you get 1 3-turn blue countdown tile out there for each active ally. And each of those blue countdowns deal a lot of damage. So basically you're holding one person down while the other 2 are just stun locked and can do nothing but watch with glassy eyes as their friend gets beaten down. Then there's Ultimate Soldier. This was a very early take on ignoring projectiles. Not a lot of characters. I don't remember if anyone did this before her. I think she might have been the first to ignore protects. For 9 red, she would just punch you one for a lot of damage. and your projectiles don't matter. In the 2016 frame of mind, this is actually probably a higher value than it is nowadays, because nowadays there's a lot of ways to ignore projectiles or get rid of them. But back in 2016, this is actually pretty valuable, because people like Luke Cage exist that are going to make projectiles. And that's a big thing to think about. Overall, I'd rate her high tier, easily, because of that legendary presence. Not to mention, do as Peggy says, being a team stun, well, quasi-team stun. And her red just ignoring protects. Her kit's pretty solid. Okay, let's skate on back down to Quake. Quake is also brings another passive to the plate that this game sorely needed. And no one really appreciated her that much until the game went on a little further. You had to get more team hitters out there that did it well consistently. Her reason for being so neat is coordinated tactics. Her passive basically says, pump up to 5, 60 full effect. Reduce damage from enemy powers that affect the whole team by 13,000. Jesus, man. Down to a minimum of 1. That's a lot of damage reduction. So, put that out there. But just think about those team hits. Like, Blade uses his green, right? All of a sudden, Quake's like, nah, we all take 1 damage. Thanos does a court death. Nah, I'm just going to, kind of minimize the effect of that. My name's Quake. I'm Daisy Johnson. I'm here to minimize that. And that's what she does. And it's really effective. If you're going against a team that uses these team hitting powers, heck, there's no reason not to abuse her. Resonance frequency is also very interesting. For 7 blue, which is super cheap, you select a color and you destroy up to 8 random tiles of that color. Not basics, just random tiles. They could be friendly, they could be enemy, you're destroying them. Does not matter. You don't get the AP for them though, but hey, this doesn't say anything but the board shake. The board shake this creates is usually really nice. So just look at your colors that you have out there, like, oh, my team doesn't seem to use yellow or doesn't use purple. Destroy that color. Get rid of it. You don't need it, and now the board shakes in your favor. It's a really good ability, and pretty good cost for it too. 7 blue for 8 destroyed tiles of a color you choose. Very nice. There's just her least effective one, Earthquake. For 11 green, she deals damage to the enemy team and shuffles the game board. The annoying thing about this ability is that it does not create cascades or board shake at all. You might ask yourself, what do you mean? Why would you say it can't create cascades? Because it literally doesn't. We've done the research, and by we, I mean myself and many others online. Check Reddit, check Discord, go for it. Check the official forums. Certain characters just kind of play by different rules, and Quake is one of them. When she shuffles the board, it will not put tiles in such a way where they can destroy themselves. It just won't. It has an algorithm set for that. God Emperor Doom, 5-star Doom, he can shuffle the board with his yellow, but it can cause cascades. And so it's kind of weird because this Earthquake power and God Emperor Doom's yellow do a similar board shake, a board shuffle, but with a different outcome in their algorithm. It's really weird and interesting, but so Earthquake is easily Daisy Johnson's worst ability because of that. It costs way too much for a team damage that does way too little. But her yellow and her blue are where it's at. I rate her mid-tier, if only because resonance frequency is really good no matter who your team is, at getting rid of the color you're not using to board shake down to colors you are using. Coordinated tactics is also super helpful, but hey, it's only helpful if the enemy is actually using those sorts of attacks. Moving on, we'll go over here to Spider-Gwen. Now, Spider-Gwen by herself, I wouldn't say is that amazing or impressive. But if you add in Miles Morales, well, shoot, add in any other web users, and Spider-Gwen becomes a lot more valuable. And that's kind of, you could replace the word Spider-Gwen with Miles Morales or Peter Parker, or you get the point. Web users need each other in this game, and Spider-Gwen is no exception. By herself, I wouldn't say she's that great. But, you know, much like Drax with people with countdowns, or Blade with a team that's giving him a lot of red, she will shine on a team with a lot of webs. Kick out the jams is probably the main reason you'd use her. For 6 yellow, you're going to get 3 basic tiles turned to webs out there, and then you fortify one of them. Now remember, a fortified tile has to be removed or matched twice in order to go away, hence you'll get 2 uses of that web tile. And remember that passive says when a web tile is matched, your team gets a burst, well, pretty large burst of health. That's pretty good. Yeah, so if you got a nice web making team, this is actually a really good ability. You can keep your whole team in the fight with this. The next best ability for her, it might be a 2-way tie here. It's either Teenage Kicks or Cherry Bomb, obviously, but let's start with Teenage Kicks. For 6 purple, nice and cheap, right? She stuns 2 random enemies for 2 turns, and then makes 2 basic tiles into webs. So for 6 purple, 2 enemies get stunned for 2 turns, and 2 more webs are placed out there. It's pretty efficient. And it's actually really nice. Especially if you've already killed one of the enemies. Well, shoot, 2 random enemies means the whole enemy team. Finally, there's Cherry Bomb for 12 red, and it sounds pricey, but bear with me. Deals a lot of damage to the enemy, and removes a random web tile from the board in order to do it. But it only costs 1 AP less for each web tile on the board to a minimum of 6. So easily, with the right team, this could be down to 6. For 6 red, 31,000 damage? Yes, please, sign us up. This is her only damaging ability, though. And if you don't have other web users out there, the odds are you're not making a lot of webs. You need 6 purple or 6 yellow in order to make those webs, and no one's giving you that purple or yellow for free. So you need that AP to make the webs to make her other abilities actually worthwhile, and she's not doing damage without it. It's for these reasons I consider her like a mid-tier. Obviously she goes up in value for adding in other web users, but I mean, I kind of gave Drax this same synopsis, and Blade and other people that rely on others this synopsis, and I'm not going to stop with Spider-Gwen. Sorry, Gwen Stacy, you're just a mid-tier. Speaking of spiders, Spider-Woman is here, and she's probably the lowest tier in this entire group. I got some low people in this grouping, and Spider-Woman is definitely amongst them, if not the lowest. Why would that be? Let's start with her red. It's 14, right there. I don't need to say much else. That's so expensive. It does pretty good damage, and it does extra damage to all the other enemies, and stuns a random enemy for 3 turns. I'm sorry, but if we reached 14 red, the fight's probably near over. To Love and Fear. This is probably one of her better abilities, but it has too many it has too many things it needs. Qualifiers. I couldn't think of the word. For 8 purple, you could choose one of 2 things, love or fear. If you choose love, you remove up to 6 enemy special tiles, and that's pretty nice. Remember what we talked about before with Howard the Duck and Drax removing enemy special tiles? This just, bloop, they're gone. For 8 purple. That's not bad at all. But there's no stun, there's no damage, nothing else. It's just pure removal of tiles. If Fear is chosen, and I kind of like this one better myself because of the damage output, she creates 4 hidden trap tiles that deal a large amount of damage if matched by the enemy. That's per trap. And that's why this is probably one of my favorite abilities of her if I have to use Spider-Woman. That's 4 trap tiles. Each of them deal 27,000 damage. So really, that's 100,000 damage worth in traps right there for 8 purple. You might think that, wow, that's got to be a really good power, right? No, because they have to be matched by the enemy. They can't be matched by you. They can't be destroyed in any way, shape, or form, or overwritten, or anything else. They have to be matched by the enemy. And I don't know if you've been playing this game long, the computer really does not want to match your traps. It seems to go out of its way to not match traps. So you gotta have to hope that they fall into place on like a match 4, so then the computer has no choice but to make that match. Finally, there's Seeking Redemption, which is actually pretty good, but it's like a more expensive, less thrilling version of Elektra's Black. Cost 9, you get a 4-turn countdown, and she intercepts targeted attacks, resisting a pretty decent amount. If the attack is below a certain amount of damage, she just dodges, resisting the entire thing. It sounds awesome, but you got to get 9 black out there. Then you could use it, and then it's a countdown tile. So if you get rid of that countdown tile, guess what? You're no longer Seeking Redemption, aren't you? There's a lot of price in here. There's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts. There's a lot of qualifiers. Spider-Woman is a low tier, plain and simple. Let's move on to Big Pun. Punisher, Frank Castle. 4-star Castle is unfortunately less thrilling than 3-star Castle. I mean, this is just my opinion. But 3-star Castle can at least, knock a guy out, with his red if they're so low on health. 4-star doesn't have that. And that's kind of weird, right? He's got this whole shtick with him about being the only person left alive on the team, and let me go into that here. First off, to make things quick, weapons expertise sounds neat on the outside, because for 8 blue you get 3 strength, black tiles, and they're black strike tiles. They're pretty good. They're decent. And he has this passive. Friendly strike tile strength is increased by 25%. And on the outside, I look at that and I think, wow, that could be really cool, right? Nah, do the math. 25% isn't that much of an increase. You don't rest all your laurels on that. It could be a lot better. Honestly, if they ever buff him, I hope they just raise that percentage to like 100 or something like that. That needs to go up in order that passive to mean something. His green is pretty fun. It's cost 10, so it's a nice midpoint cost, right? Stuns allies for 2 turns and which is kind of weird. You're like, why would I want to stun my allies, right? And it deals damage to the enemy team plus extra damage for every downed enemy. This is a great ability when you think of the cost. So for 10 green, you're either doing 9,000 damage to the entire enemy team, or 9,000 some odd damage to one of the 2 people remaining, and then an extra near like 12,000 damage to the enemy team because you downed that 3rd person already. That's crazy. Or if there's 1 person left, that's 24,000 extra damage on top of that 9. You're looking at 33,000 damage because there's only 1 person left. This is a cool ability because it actually gets stronger as the amount of enemies you have are reduced on the board. Finally, there's Punish. It has 2 sides to it. For 10 black, which is a little expensive for what it does, you deal some damage, which is okay, plus damage for every friendly strike tile on the board, and obviously it adds the strike tiles in to that damage too. But if all allies are stunned, refer to that green for more info, or downed, this power becomes an army of 1, which now it only costs 7. He creates 2 strength strike tiles, which is, they're okay. They're not that strong, honestly. But then he deals a decent amount of damage, plus more damage for every friendly strike on the board. So it's actually stronger and costs less black. Unfortunately, you need your friends to be stunned for this, or downed. And these are all reasons why, as fun as this is, as green is, as interesting as the idea might be, I have to say it, he's a low tier. His best ability is probably that green, and it only gets cool as enemies start to drop off and die, but that's... I mean, if you're already killing the enemies, then you're not really needing Frank Castle, right? You could have done this quicker with other characters. Punish is neat, but it's just that, it's a gimmick. Sorry, Frank. Let's move on from Frank to Agent Venom. Agent Venom, I'd say, is probably a good, strong mid-tier contender, and it's basically because just of his black alone. His black and military might only costs 5, one of the cheapest abilities at this time. So super cheap. It does drain another 2 AP from the highest friendly colored AP pool as well, though. So if you have 5 black and then like I don't know, 7 red, 2, and that's your highest other pool, it's going to take 2 of that red off, okay? But you get 13,000 damage for 5 black. If you have 0 in all the other numbers, guess what? You're not losing anything else because it's not going to take it. It's just that simple. If you don't have it, it doesn't take it, you still get the damage. If you have at least 16 AP in any color, this power becomes the alien weakness, which, so at the start of your turn, now it's not active, right? You can't fire it off for 5 black, so that's gone. Oh, hey, what's up, John? Ads? Oh, I had ads? Oh, interesting. Did not know that, man. Thanks for telling me. Anyways, I'm sorry. At the start of your turn, you drain 2 AP from your highest friendly AP pool, destroy 9 random tiles, deal damage to Venom, which is a little unfortunate, right? Those tiles do not give you AP, and if all your friendly colored AP is below 16, then it goes back to military might. Really, what at the end of the day, what you're looking at here is at the start of your turn, he'll take a tiny bit of damage, but he does some board shake, and that allows you to potentially gain more AP passively through the board shake, and maybe even destroy some other random enemy tiles from all this stuff that's happening. It's easily one of his best abilities is this black, because military might is good, alien weakness is good. This is probably the reason I would say Agent Venom is a good, at least mid-tier, if not higher. Probably going to just say mid-tier, though, because to put him higher means to put him with people like, I don't know, Medusa and Peggy. They're definitely a lot better. Take cover's not bad. It's 11. Here's the bad part. It's 11 yellow. And it only does a small amount of team damage for the cost, even if I put up to level 5, right? But all his allies are invisible for 4 turns after that. That's pretty cool. You could have a lot of fun with that, being invisible. You know, you get all those benefits of being invisible, like, I don't know, not dying. Yeah, John, he is no Medusa, of course. Although if he has all the little black tendrils coming out the back of his head, he could probably look like it. Anyways, Symbiotic Assault only costs 10 red, does an okay amount of damage. If you have at least 12 AP in a colored AP pool, you deal more damage. Unfortunately, this guy never got buffed, so these damage numbers don't look like some of the other characters' damage numbers. Okay, so Kate Bishop is already dealing more damage than Venom. But Kate Bishop's powers cost a lot more. So, you know, a little pro, a little con there. At the end of the day, I'd still say he's just mid-tier, and it's mainly because of military might. Military might is nice and cheap and easy and accessible. It's fun to play with, but it doesn't make him a really, really good character. We're getting down to the last few. War Machine. Ugh. He got buffed. But Lucky is cool. War Machine got buffed, and got buffed big time. He used to be completely worse than what he is now. Now that War Machine is buffed, I'd say he's probably still low tier. Let's look into it. One of the big things about War Machine when he came out was he was the only character when MPQ released him is he could actually just remove invisibility tiles with his blue. Just, oh, you have invisibilities? Oh, well, I don't care where they're at. They're just gone. Removes all of them. Howard the Duck has 10 Duck Looses out there. War Machine's like, no, you don't. Don't care. Now, and just keep this in mind. This removes all enemy invisibility and protect tiles. So protects are gone as well, but it's invisibility tiles. Okay? It doesn't mean invisibility pure and simple. So if Agent Venom says, oh, my allies are invisible, War Machine still doesn't make them visible. They're invisible because Agent Venom said so, not because a tile says so. So heat signature detection does not let you see through Agent Venom's invisibility that he puts on his friends. It's kind of an interesting little, conundrum there. It does a pretty good amount of damage now that he got buffed. 30k for 10 blue is nothing to sniff at. This was the entire reason that War Machine was really created in this game. The other two abilities are meh, even with the buff. Let's go into Aerial Assault to start it off. For 8 red, which used to be like 10, I want to say, you get a 4-turn countdown tile, deal some damage.
Wild tiles out there, new tiles have a 35% chance of being a nice strength, a nice buffed attack tile on his turn. So you have a chance of getting attack tiles falling down when you're making your cascades and your moves. It's just a chance, and it's cost 8 red to deal mediocre damage and have a chance of attack tiles. So I'm starting to build portfolio right now, I think. You're starting to see it. Gatling gun costs 8 green. It destroys 10 non-friendly tiles, so in other words, it could hit enemy tiles as well, in 2 random adjacent rows. You get what I'm saying here? 2 random adjacent rows, and deal damage per tile destroyed. This is better than what it used to be, by far. It used to be like a countdown, and you'd have to wait for it to go down. Then it would destroy like a block of tiles for each countdown you had out there, and that was really nice when you made it in conjunction with his red, because then you would get a lot more attack tiles that way. But it requires too much setup. This doesn't need that setup anymore, but still, I don't know, it just doesn't have the same punch that you can get out of 8 green from a lot of other characters. That's really what we're talking about at the end of the day. The cost of your green versus what other characters could do with said green. Anyways, it's damaging. I'll give him that, but that's about as far as I can throw it. He's low tier for sure. His heat signature is still probably the neatest thing he does, but I mean, unless you're going against a team of invisible tile laying people, he doesn't have a place on your team. Yeah, right, John. Should be 1 per match based on percentage, but it's not. So there goes low tier War Machine. Let's move on over to Wasp. Now, Wasp is good. Wasp has been buffed recently, but even without the buff, if we go pre-buff Wasp, I would still say she's high tier for class of 2016. She brings something to the table that a lot of characters don't, and that is passive AP theft. Let's just go right into that, why don't we? That buzzing sound, start of the turn, if you have at least 6 blue, you get a random 1-turn countdown that steals 2 AP, and it's in the color of that tile, mind you. So if she makes it out of purple tile, that's 2 purple you're stealing from the enemy, okay? Part of the buff is that this also creates a locked swarm tile of that color. Up to 4 max of that color, mind you. If an enemy matches the countdown, she does a sting that does a lot of damage. Like a lot of damage. So it's kind of a conundrum when you play with the Wasp, because on one hand you want them to match the tile. Come on, there's a lot of damage right there, and it's passive, and it's awesome. But on the other hand, stealing AP is never bad. Please give me the AP. This is also one of those characters that's really good with Drax, because Drax says, "Oh, hey, you made a 1-turn countdown. Let me do that secret weapon passive like every turn. Thank you." So you loved her pre-buff. Have not used her enough since. Yeah, John. If I may suggest, she is super fun when you put with any other swarm tile characters. They basically tried to make these swarm tile characters into something like the web tile users have, but it still doesn't have the same punch. But it is fun to see it in action. It's definitely a different treat. To go along with that buzzing sound, let me present to you the Wasp Sting. I don't put it up that high because honestly I'm not playing her because of the stun factor, but it's still in the back of my head when I use her. So she deals an okay amount of damage for 7 black, but if you have at least 8 blue, which remember, you're gunning for 6 blue to have passively to hold on to make that buzzing sound tile, okay? So you're holding on to blue AP already. Right? If you hold on to 8 blue, whenever you use this black stun ability of hers, she stuns a target for 3 turns, or 2 if you have it down to level 3 like I do. It's a good ability. Even for 7 black, just a 2-turn stun with damage isn't a bad thing at all. I mean, I would definitely take that. Finally, there's her Tactical Intuition. This is actually a very abusable ability if you plan on it ahead of time. This is something that you kind of want to plan and use. Honestly, this is one of those abilities that I used alongside of 3-star Falcon to great effect. You'll see why in a second here. For 5 yellow, you convert all friendly strikes to protects, and vice versa. You empower them by a good amount too. It used to not do that. Pre-buff, she didn't empower them. She just swapped them around. Well, I mean, she empowered them, but it was like a little amount. I'm sorry. I'm saying it wrong. It just wasn't so much where you're just like, wow, that's amazing. Now it's like a really big buff. So I have to say it correctly. It's a buff. It's so much more now than it used to be. If no such tiles exist, so in other words, if she has a protect and like she has 1 protect but no strike, this part doesn't matter. She literally has to have 0 protects and 0 strikes on the board for this to happen. She then creates 1 strike tile and 1 protect tile. For each swarm tile on the board, she increases all those values by 50%, then removes all the swarm tiles. That's probably the worst part about her buff, is that she takes and removes her swarm tiles just to give this extra 50% lift. I don't think that's necessarily worth it, because those swarm tiles get really useful on other characters like Ant-Man or God, there was another person. I want to say it's Yellow Jacket. I'm not 100% on that. I have to get back to you on that. Anyways, it's a really fun ability though, because Falcon for 9 purple throws out his was it like 8 protect tiles just randomly. You do a Falcon's big old protect bird swarm thing, and then all of a sudden you're like tactical intuition. All those protects are now strike tiles, and they're buffed, and now you're just smacking people around like pinballs. It's great. Great fun. Yeah, yellow is awesome with 4-star Captain Marvel. You're right. 4-star Captain Marvel buffs things every time those countdowns go off as well. So what John's referring to is 4-star Marvel has a yellow passive that says, hey, when a countdown expires, she buffs 3 tiles by like a great amount. Well, guess what? Wasp is making a countdown every turn as long as you have 6 blue. And so if you're buffing tiles every turn, then once in a while you could use 5 yellow and switch the protects to strikes, the strikes to protects. Woof! You have so much damage potential and protect potential here in this character. I would definitely rate her high tier because of that blue ability alone. The other 2 abilities are just great support for it. Is she going to win the fight by herself? Probably not. She needs people to help her, but that's because her kit doesn't have like high damaging moves. Even still, you throw her on a team with Medusa, who's got that attack tile stuff going on, I think you'll be just fine. Okay, let's move on down to finally Winter Soldier. Poor Winter Soldier. Bucky doesn't deserve this. And Bucky Burns unfortunately gets it anyways. I think he got buffed at one point, but I can't even tell. If I was to tell you off the top of my head what the buff was. Nope, don't know what it was. Precision Shot for 8 purple says you select a tile, you destroy it, you deal damage, and you steal 4 AP of that color. Meh. That's meh at best. You're stealing 4 AP of a color of your choice. The damage is not what we're talking about here. Really what you're talking about is this ability allows you to try to make a cascade. Get rid of a tile, and maybe that one tile will fall down, and you're like, oh, that's a match 5 if I line this up just right. That's kind of nice. But is it 8 purple nice? No. Yeah, put him back on ice. Oh, hey, John. See you, dude. The blue detonator. No, Nick Fury does it better. When it comes to blue-based trap tiles, Detonator puts out a 2-turn countdown and 4 random traps. When that countdown hits 0, you destroy all the traps. You deal a good amount of damage for each trap. But if the enemy matches the traps away, they turn into attack tiles. Those attack tiles are actually pretty beefy as well. The problem is this all costs 10. And the secondary problem is they could just match that countdown away and get rid of it, and now those traps just sit there until someone deals with them. And they have to be matched, mind you. If they get destroyed by match 4 or some other ability, they're worthless. So there's too much fragility here. Detonator is unfortunately a fragile ability. Finally, moving target is his most expensive, is obviously the most damaging, but it's not worth it. 12 red says big damage, countdown that if you match it away, it does even more damage. But that's just it. You have to have the 12 red. You have to have time for that countdown to go off, or hopefully it falls into a location where you can actually match it. So it's easily his worst ability. All in all, he's low tier because of his abilities cost high amounts and there's too much ifs, thens, and buts about it. So, at the end of the day, if I'm giving you low tiers and high tiers, we already went through who's what, but let's just put this in your memory. Peggy is still high tier for 2016. Medusa's high tier for 2016. Nova, just for the airborne thing alone, not to mention his abilities are cheap, would be high tier. And Wasp. I would use those characters and abuse them in the PvP as much as you can. Obviously, this is assuming you don't have 5 stars to use, but that's my 4-star synopsis. So, what do you think? If you have any different things you want to talk about or ask about, maybe you want to get a different synopsis. Like maybe you want to know about how to use a certain character that we talked about with other characters on your roster. I'm happy to go over it. Drop me a comment, send me some information, maybe post an image and catch me on Discord or Reddit. You know, I don't mind reaching out and trying to help people out. Anyways, that's it for the class of 2016 4 stars. I'm going to let you go. I'll see you tomorrow when we continue Mr. Negative's Welcome to Shield run for his day 3 and day 4. Thanks again to John, and see y'all later. Goodbye.